The U.S. Special Envoy Tim King said that the truce is another opportunity for parties to choose peace instead of war. People in Taiz continue to struggle daily under Houthi militia siege and closure of main roads in the city. The United Nations says that despite the truce, mines still claim lives of civilians across the country. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Roshan Fouad. The United Nations Security Council has welcomed the renewal of the truce and appreciated the conflict parties' commitment to peace. Further, the Council members called for lifting Taiz siege and opening of main roads. This report gives more details.
The UN-brokered truce began on April 2 at the start of Ramadan, despite the Houthi constant violations. Part of the agreement is lifting the Houthi siege on Taiz and the reopening of the Houthi-held airport in Sana'a to commercial flights. Members of the United Nations Security Council welcomed the extension of Yemen's 2-month truce. In a press statement, the members spoke about the measures taken by the parties to maintain the truce, which led to real and tangible benefits for the Yemeni people, including a significant drop in civilian casualties. They also expressed their hope that the extension of the truce would lead to a permanent ceasefire and inclusive political settlement under the auspices of the United Nations. The members of the Security Council encouraged the Yemeni parties to continue their engagement with the United Nations Special Envoy to negotiate and communicate with each other in a spirit of mutual respect and compromise. In addition, they also expressed concern about the grave humanitarian impact of the continued closure of roads around Taiz and called upon the Houthis to act with flexibility in negotiations and to immediately open the main roads. The members of the Security Council also repeated their deep concern about the risk of famine and encouraged donors to fully fund the United Nations Humanitarian Response Plan. They underlined the need to have an inclusive, comprehensive political settlement to address the humanitarian and economic crises and to protect civilians. In addition, the UN Secretary General also welcomed the agreement by the government of Yemen and the Houthis to renew the truce in Yemen for an additional 2 months. He thanked the UN Special Envoy to Yemen, Hans Grunberg, and his team for their efforts, and those of all regional and international actors, including the members of the Security Council, for their continued support. Since the truce came into effect, Yemenis were given a relief from violence, including a significant reduction in civilian casualties, an increase in fuel deliveries through Hodeidah port, and the resumption of international commercial flights from Sana'a for the first time in almost 6 years. Yemenis deserve a better life and a permanent break from violence, and hopefully the truce will be turned into a permanent ceasefire.
U.S. Envoy for Yemen said the 2-month truce extension in Yemen provides another opportunity for the parties to choose peace over war. He further mentioned that he would continue to strongly support Yemen's efforts to reach a comprehensive, inclusive, Yemeni-led and owned peace process. Russian Foreign Ministry has welcomed the 2-month truce extension by warring parties. They pointed out that the humanitarian situation in the country improved significantly during the truce period. They added the 2 additional months would contribute to consolidating the positive developments in the conflict in Yemen. The United Arab Emirates and Kuwait Ministry of Foreign Affairs welcomed the truce renewal announcement. They further praised efforts by the United Nations to reach a sustainable political solution and enhance prospects for peace and stability in Yemen. They also called on all countries to support the ceasefire in Yemen and push the parties towards a comprehensive solution. Norway ambassador just returned from a visit to Aden with European Union members. The visit included meetings with President El Alimi, the PLC, Prime Minister, Foreign Minister bin Mubarak, UN agencies, and civil society actors. He mentioned that there is a momentum for peace and development in Yemen, and he is looking forward to coming back soon. Secretary of State spoke with UN Special Envoy to congratulate him on his leadership for peace efforts in Yemen. The Secretary repeated the United States' commitment to supporting a resolution to the Yemeni conflict. Secretary Blinken stressed the need for the parties to the conflict to seize this opportunity to bring relief to Yemen. While the government has showed a real commitment to implementing the truce items, Houthi militia continues to manipulate with negotiations and refuse to lift siege on Taiz and open the roads in the city. This has aggravated the suffering of people. This report gives more details.
Residents of Taiz city hope UN-sponsored talks between Yemen's warring parties to reopen roads in Taiz will allow people in the city and surrounding areas to go to work and school and facilitate the flow of aid and goods. A deal is also a vital trust-building measure to cement a race truce that was extended for another 2 months on Thursday between the Houthi militia that largely took over North Yemen and the government forces. In Taiz city, the historic citadel perched on a rocky hill and an old mosque bear the scars of war. Many homes have been destroyed by shelling in the war that was started by the Houthi militia since 2015. Taiz governorate has a population of 5 million, including 400,000 in the city. The Houthis control the governorate's industrial areas, while the road closures have driven up food and fuel prices and disrupted access to basic services. Cancer patients there have to drive more than 3 hours along narrow mountain roads to receive chemotherapy, which they can barely afford in Taiz, a city that has been largely cut off from the rest of Yemen during a 7-year war. The siege has plunged the country into a humanitarian crisis. The prices of basic foodstuffs have risen dramatically as a result of the high costs of transportation due to the lengthy, dangerous roads. The country also suffers from a lack of portable water and poor medical services, especially for those with chronic diseases. Those who live in the countryside have to travel long distances on dangerous roads to reach the city and get medical treatment. According to international organizations, the Houthi militia should fulfill its commitment under the agreement, open roads and crossings in Taiz to end its isolation from the rest of Yemeni governorates, and not delay or link this humanitarian file with other political issues.
A child was injured in Hais district when a mine planted by the Houthi militia exploded in the agricultural lands east of the district. The child was injured while he was working on a plowing tractor with a daily wage in order to provide a source of income for his family, and he was taken to Doctors Without Borders hospital in Mecca. The United Nations has said that despite the truce, more than 19 civilians have been killed in Yemen, mainly because of mines. This report gives more details.
Despite a statewide ceasefire, at least 19 civilians, including 3 children, have been murdered in Yemen in the last 2 months, according to a United Nations official. The ceasefire was the first real lull in violence in the Arab world's poorest country in 6 years, but each side has accused the other of breaking the agreement at times. Yemen's warring sides agreed to extend the truce for another 2 months on Thursday. A spokesperson for the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights told reporters on Friday that landmines, including improvised mines and explosive remnants of war, were responsible for the majority of casualties since the ceasefire began in early April. 3 of the 19 victims, she added, were shot dead by sniper fire in the provinces of Taiz and Al-Dola. Snipers inflicted significant injuries on 2 victims. A weaponized drone also injured 4 civilians, one of which was a girl, according to the agency. 32 civilians were injured during the 2-month ceasefire. Over 150,000 people have been killed in the battle, including over 14,500 civilians, and the conflict has caused one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, putting millions of Yemenis on the verge of starvation. At the United Nations, there have been concerns that the warring parties in Yemen could take advantage of the ceasefire to regroup and prepare for future battles. The United Nations Security Council welcomed the extension of the truce in Yemen and expressed hope that a strengthened truce would be translated into a durable ceasefire and an inclusive, comprehensive political settlement under the auspices of the United Nations. Members of the Council expressed concern about the grave humanitarian impact of the ongoing road closures around Taiz, and urged the Houthis to act with flexibility in negotiations and immediately open the main roads. They also expressed deep concern about the risk of famine in Yemen and urged donors to support the United Nations humanitarian appeal.
The Houthi militia has committed more than 18 new violations on the western coast fronts during the past 24 hours. The sources explain that the Houthi militia committed 11 violations in Hais access, including a violation by a drone that was monitored in the liberated areas south of Al Jarrahi. Meanwhile, monitoring units documented more than 7 violations in El Barah axis west of Taz. Students of Abiyan University staged a protest in which they demanded government agencies to provide buses for remote areas. As a result of the students' inability to continue their education due to the high transportation fees, to the extent that they were unable to cope with them, the students held a protest. The people of Jaishan district demanded the opening of Halhal Road, which was closed for years. A number of residents stated that they find difficulty in moving and transporting their needs of food supplies or derivatives and medicines. They pointed out that their suffering amounted to their inability to provide first aid to their patients due to the closure of the road. Coming next. Huge rallies in Aden protest against repeated power cuts and call on the government to provide better electricity service.
بأي حق الحوثي يقصف علينا هنا على منازلنا وإحنا نازحين بأي حق؟ هذا ولا بحق الإنسانية.
الأمم المتحدة يجون على هذا الدمار والخراب. الآن أصبحنا بلا مأوى. فين نروح؟ الحوثة لم يخلونا ننام ولا نستقر في بيوتنا.
بأي ذنب يقتلوا الأطفال والنساء وهم في بيوتهم آمنين؟ يا أصحاب المصيرة الشيطانية اتقوا الله في الناس.
Welcome back. In Aden, people have taken to the streets protesting against repeated power cuts in the city. It has become hard for people to endure anymore, especially during summer. This report gives more details.
The citizens in Aden are suffering from the hot weather amid popular demands to reform the electricity system and services. Mohammed is a Yemeni citizen that uses this cardboard sheet to relieve the unbearable heat and compensate his children for long hours of power outages.
The electricity outage happens every day. It works for 1 hour and cuts for 5 hours, and sometimes we are with no electricity for 2 days straight.
People in Aden cannot rest or sleep as a result of long hours of electric outage, and it also results in preventing water from reaching their homes. Even the service projects that philanthropists tried to establish for citizens to cover the government's failure to provide services face serious challenges.
We can't even get some rest. The electricity outage happens a lot. Pump water that merchants gave us works only through electricity. So if there is no electricity, then we also have no water. I also thought of bringing a generator, but it needs petrol and there is no petrol.
This hard reality that citizens face forced them to protest during the past few days in the city of Aden and to demand the Presidential Council to reform the electricity and water system and the rest of the services.
We need water and electricity, and it's very important and an essential need. We don't want commercial stations, we want governmental stations.
A number of state power stations, including Bitromasila, Qatari and Al-Hiswa. These state power stations, once provided with the needed maintenance work and fuel, can make a difference in resolving the constant power cuts in the city. So, if the government is really serious in resolving this issue, this is the only way to do it.
The basics of life and the simplest services are not provided for the people of Aden and their children, and the continuation of this absence means that deprivation will surround the reality and future of these young people.
Under the slogan Arts for Peace, Aden has hosted Fine Arts Fair. Local artists displayed their works during this event. This report has more details.
In the midst of warfare, art remains a salve to the Yemeni people's wounds, a silver lining as bleak anguish takes hold. People have resorted to art to unleash their aspirations, to paint pictures of their lofty hopes and dreams. At the art forum in the interim capital of Aden, this rings true.
أسسنا منتدى الفن للحاجة الماسة.
We've established the art forum to showcase art in Aden Governorate, and we hope to expand our exhibition to other governorates. We aim to help the youth spread their ideas of peace, acceptance and harmony, as well as demonstrate their talents. People in the midst of war are seeking artistic outlets.
Many art projects were highlighted by the forum in a vital step to expand integral arts and create opportunities for young people to express their creativity. The participants' artistic creations have embodied in their content the sublime meanings of peace, love, coexistence, and harmony. Many artists use this open platform as an opportunity to showcase their multicolored artworks, unique ideas, and wonderful human interpretations of harmony.
نحن بحاجة للسلام.
We need peace. As women, children and youth, peace is vital. And as long as we have security and stability, we can have peace. If we stand together with knowledge, education and determination, we can achieve peace.
The city enjoyed a massive turnout, an echo of a time when its residents wholly embraced coexistence. Artists have endeavored to replicate that lost era, to revive Aden's long-lost peace.
The president-elect of the International Federation of Journalists dedicated her victory to the 4 Yemeni journalists sentenced to death by the Houthi militia. This came in a speech delivered at the end of the 31st conference for the International Federation of Journalists, and she raised a Save the Kidnapped Journalists hashtag to support them. Journalists have been abducted, jailed, tortured, and even sentenced to death by the Houthi militia. This rebel group continues to suppress media and freedom of speech. This report has more on this story.
Amnesty International has urged the Houthi rebels to free 4 journalists who are facing the death penalty in the war-torn country, ahead of an appeal court that will be taking place on Sunday. The 4 journalists were abducted in June 2015 in the capital Sana'a, and since this date, they were deprived of every means of life, even seeing the sun. Their arrest was motivated by their reporting on human rights violations committed by Houthi forces, according to the International Federation of Journalists and the Yemeni Journalists Syndicate statements. The rights group mentioned in a statement early on Friday that the Houthi leaders must quash the death sentences and implement the immediate release of the 4 Yemeni journalists who are facing execution following a grossly unfair trial. In April 2020, the Houthi court sentenced the 4 journalists to death and claimed that the journalists were arrested on charges of treason and spying for foreign states. However, the militia is just trying to conceal its crimes from the world through its endeavors to repress journalism and freedom of speech. Amnesty's Middle East and North Africa Deputy Director said that this has been a shame of a trial since the beginning and has further borne a terrible toll on the men and their families, according to her statement. At the time of their trial, Amnesty criticized their sentencing on trumped-up charges, while Reporters Without Borders organization has described the verdict as a totally unacceptable one. What has worsened the situation is that one of the detained men is in a critical health condition with heart and other diseases. So Amnesty organization has requested medical care provision for the journalists, pending their overdue release. And they have further mentioned that the denial of medical treatment for the seriously ill is an act of cruelty, which amounts to torture and other unpleasant treatment. An appeal is going to be heard by the Specialized Criminal Appeals Division in Sana'a on Sunday, in an attempt to rescue those journalists and return life back to them.
Yemen is participating in the annual meetings of the Islamic Development Bank Group 2022, hosted by the Egyptian city of Sharm el-Sheikh. The Minister of Planning and International Cooperation said that the meetings discussed the supporting of Yemen's economic recovery and reconstruction efforts. He referred to the great contributions of the bank in Yemen, extending to 4 decades, in the fields of infrastructure, support for the agriculture sector, and human development. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim King said that the truce is another opportunity for parties to choose peace instead of war. People in Taiz continue to struggle daily under Houthi militia siege and closure of main roads in the city. The United Nations says that despite the truce, mines still claim lives of civilians across the country. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. It was Roshan Fouad. Thank you for watching.